the outset, let me convey my deep gratitude and thanks to this extraordinary Center of Geopolitics in the Manipal University, to Professor Arvind Kumar and Professor Nalpat for having thought about this event and for having given me the opportunity to be here for the last 2 days. And I'd like to also thank Professor Swaran Singh and his colleagues at the AAS for having thought of me to come with them. I have enjoyed these 2 days in Manipal, and these discussions over the last 2 days have been immensely valuable. As a valedictory speaker, I am really at a loss of what to say, because I do not want to summarize what you have done, but I'll attempt to give my own little perspective about South Asia and South Asia regional cooperation, which has been discussed, but from a different angle. This is something which I have been trying for the last 2-3 years, and I hope you'll bear with me. I do not know whether 15 minutes will be enough, but I want to say security and cooperation in South Asia. This should be for SAARC at something like 27 years now. SAARC's inception during the mid-1980s was in a very troubled period internationally as also regionally. Cold War tensions were high, yet in the East-West context, the buzz about security and cooperation was getting louder following the Helsinki process, albeit with greater accent on security than on cooperation. On the other hand, the SAARC Charter of 1985 somehow eschews any mention of the word security. In retrospect, perhaps, it can be said that its authors may have managed to save centrality of cooperation in spite of the Cold War snarl. SAARC Charter spoke of principles of United Nations and underlined interdependence and cooperation as the way for South Asian region. During the past 27 years, SAARC's checkered evolution has had nonetheless to cede so much space to the looming shadow of security in many ways. And here security is within quotes. One should therefore give it a hard look. Conventionally, there are several factors to this analysis: diverse national threat perceptions and the means to address them with available means in the given regional and global context comprise conventional security. I'll repeat: diverse national threat perceptions and the means to address them with available means in the given regional and global context comprise conventional security. Since SAARC's inception, the international security environment has been in a flux and has gone through historic transformations. Historic, I mean, because 89 was the fall of the Berlin Wall, then the Soviet collapse, and then 9/11, and there are a lot of things which we were never foreseen. Now, these have impacted on the attitudes, perceptions, and approach of South Asian countries to security. And in security matters, attitudes and perceptions often shape reality. The facts on the ground for SAARC region tell a different tale. There are about 1.5 billion people, more than 1.5 billion, actually it is 1.6 billion people in South Asia, people who for various reasons have been held back, while other regions of the world prospered. It is the most populous and least connected region. It has 2 nuclear weapon states within its periphery, 2 more in its immediate neighborhood, and fleets and bases of another in its maritime environment. The only global military alliance of the day, NATO, is actively engaged here. In terms of the rift between rich and poor, the region has most poor people living below $1 a day, and it tops the indices about the seamy side of life, no matter how you describe them, as Rina's piece about women indicated. So these people has the most poor people, this region has the most poor people living below $1 a day, as also those challenged by diseases and endemic scarcity of life's essentials like water, air, food, health, education and energy. On top of these is globalization, which intertwines lives of South Asians with each other and the rest of the world. There can be two ways to view security in this SAARC perspective. One, to continue to analyze and shape it business as usual in terms of military balance, advanced weapon systems and force multipliers, revolution in military affairs, and the old-fashioned system of deterrence and alliances. The second approach could be to look at the region, its burning problems, and the real menaces which impact on people's lives and habitats, both urban and rural alike, and provide lion's share of damage to human development. The second approach is also born out of the incapacity of the first approach to make any dent whatsoever into roots of popular threat perceptions, popular anxieties and angst. The militaristic and weapons-oriented determinants of security, no matter how essential and sexy they may be, they fall short of providing real security to people and society or coping with the looming menaces. There is a need to reset the traditional mindset to address this and move towards security and cooperation in a holistic fashion. While military security proceeds from divisiveness among peoples, the holistic approach inter alia seeks to nourish commonalities. There is no reason why both cannot be mutually complementary, but the former and its trappings have somehow hogged space. But not anymore, since the acute perceptions of dangers in ignoring the holistic imperative are today rooted on scientific findings. Findings that point to global warming and devastations implied in it, diminishing of habitats of man and beast leading to dread diseases, and the spectre of inequality and deprivations breeding bloody conflicts beyond the power of any deterrent theories to control. I mean, bloody conflicts including terrorism, which even the God-given deterrent theorists, Kissinger and all, they say today we can't cope with it. Nuclear weapons are not able to cope with the terrorist threat. So that's why I say it is beyond the power of deterrent theories. The global situation is such that no matter how one sees these alarmist fears, South Asia lies in the middle of it. The tension between globalizing economy and divided global societies endangers the planet by diminishing cooperation, which is solely needed to meet the challenges. And I say this advisedly, diminishing cooperation, as is very evident in the failures of conferences on climate change or conference like Rio +20. The confrontational calculus of the Cold War years induced in South Asia a quasi-stability on the one hand and spawned on the other elites reared on inevitability of armed conflict. Even though the challenges to human security in a holistic sense are undiminished, for better or for worse, the conjunction of events has led today to an impasse in the region. I mean impasse in the militaristic and conventional security terms, and a compelling need to explore how to cope with a fuller matrix of insecurities, regional as well as bilateral. For vast populations of South Asia, the list also includes the mounting toll on ecosystem and climate due to global warming, as also indigenous activities. A demographic challenge and vast areas mired in extreme poverty, untouched by globalization, and posing unprecedented risks for region and beyond. Cooperative forums within the region and across the borders for addressing these problems have not been effective so far. 17 summits of South Asian countries have consistently valued interdependence, engagement, and cooperation, and demonstrated common understanding, determination, and commitment to deal with the endemic problems of lack of development, poverty, disease, and scarcity. Their statements of the summit emphasize the point that we all will have to grow together and not at each other's expense. It is a different matter that summit outcomes of SAARC are taking too long a time to lead to tangible changes on the ground. Stalemates in other parts of the globe, notably Europe or Southeast Asia, have changed over past decades through meticulous and steady regional endeavors. European Union's success in particular is so comprehensive that the other powerful institutions based in Europe, that is NATO, suffers in comparison. People in Europe find the agenda of EU much closer to their concerns than the demands of NATO's expansive edifice. Relative diminution of prestige of politico-military approach to problem solving is the result of a prolonged absence of war and the expansion of democracy with shared prosperity. EU's expansion, in contrast to NATO, creates a competitive interest among adjacent countries to join the success story. While saying this, I am not oblivious to the present crisis which is being faced by Euro, the present difficulties of Euro and at the same time the continuing commitments of the European leaders, particularly France and Germany, even in the face of domestic opposition, to cope with this problem successfully. They present a mixed and uncertain picture, and their success or failure will have a far-reaching impact internationally. South Asia's drive to regional cooperation should be seen in the light of European example. The long-cherished goal of economic integration slips from our grasp despite so many commonalities which belong to culture, civilization, art, language, literature, and even a work ethos exceeding the commonalities found in other regions. Work ethos I mentioned because with my long years in UN, I found South Asians really excelling in the UN. In the UN system, be that Bangladeshis, Indians, Sri Lankans, Nepalese, they do so well that the UN system organizations depend on them to have a good delivery statistic. And they come to this region actually to have success stories. But in our region, somehow or the other, we don't coalesce. Bureaucratic inertia and a deep-rooted lack of self-esteem, in my view, hinders traction towards the SAARC objectives. These come in the way of SAARC moving from talk to actual action. A holistic approach to security and cooperation in South Asian region cries out for tapping every window of opportunity with speed before the problems assume such proportions that no amount of militaristic prowess would be able to solve them. For instance, the problems posed by large-scale migration across the borders. Security and cooperation in South Asia cannot be ordained or gifted from outside the region. It is a vision worthy of consideration, but it has got to grow from grassroots among its 1.5 billion people. SAARC summit decisions encompass a good range of themes in this context, such as people-to-people connectivity, transport and communication, health and education, energy grid, food bank, poverty alleviation, empowerment of women, combating crime and trafficking, and fighting terrorism. South Asia is ripe for action in these areas and demands greater coherence of planning and operational will on the part of its constituents. There are axioms and paradigms which are germane to security within quotes, but which militate against each other. On one side is the story written by war theorists of a bygone era, Clausewitz and company, a story rooted in, and I'm describing these terms, alienation, clash, antagonism, deterrent, zero-sum games, exclusion, boycott, attrition, scorched earth policy, and annihilation. On the other side is the path of understanding, engagement, inclusion, empathy, interdependence, cooperation, positive subgames, and bonding among people to prevail against impending menaces. It's up to us to choose which side we want to belong. The second path commends itself for South Asia, where pursuit or drift of Clausewitzian security seems to have led it nowhere in solving problems. India leads the list of global arms importers. Pakistan is not far behind, nor is Asia for that matter. Given the stage of development, governance, and polity in the region, seeking of security in exclusively conventional terms risk being half-baked and chimerical. Drumming of war hysteria or antagonisms can also lead to catastrophic failures. Severe limitations of Shathe Shatyam policies. I hope you understand what is Shathe Shatyam. It is Kautilya. It says tit for tat. Now, tit for tat policies have severe limitations, and in our milieu particularly, these limitations manifest from time to time. Even a tiny lunatic fringe of our large populations, and I want to explain, people think that India is huge, but all the rest are small. This is no longer true. Pakistan and Bangladesh both have crossed 18 crores. So by 2030, 100 years after the roundtable conference for which Mahatma Gandhi went, the India that he perceived of 300 million people will have triplicated or much more. The Bangladesh and Pakistan might themselves have 300 million each, and our own country, beloved, might go to 160 crores. So we are dealing with very large population. Even Nepal, people describe it, as I said yesterday, as a small country, but they have 30 million people. In such situations, if you spawn hatred and antagonism and hate thy neighbor, even 0.001% of this, if it inspires the youth, whose numbers is the largest in the world, you can have crazy thousands and thousands who can die, who can kill, who can do anything. How do you cope with them?